Welcome back to DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, and we are there. The month of May has begun. We're 6 days in, nothing real much has happened on track yet, but the month of May is here, and of course we are here to preview that famous month of May, and of course the Indianapolis road course, and there's some race called the Indianapolis 500, happens once a year. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but we'll discuss that, as well as the news that Future Dan mentioned last week of David Malukas being dropped by McLaren. It was over a week ago now, so it feels like a long time ago. This is the old news, but we will give you our take on it very briefly at the start, about his future, McLaren's future, and his time at McLaren. But I must start this recording with a very important announcement. On the day of recording, it is Pato O'Ward's birthday. So happy birthday, Pato O'Ward. I hope you have an absolutely smashing birthday. And yeah, just happy birthday, because I'm sure you'll be listening. I need to get that.
I had no idea what that was going to be. I thought we were going to have some major announcement that you were going to fling.
You're saying that's not a major announcement, because I see it.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Yeah, happy birthday, Pato. Or I don't know the Spanish, unfortunately.
Feliz cumpleaños or something like that.
That sounds like that. Sounds about right. Dan, if you've not been doing your lessons ahead of Canapino next year,
I've still got 8 months out of Canapino next year. I mean, all I need to learn is something about tire deg or bumping in Spanish, and I think I'll be fine. Hello, listeners of DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast. It is Future Dan yet again. Sorry for interrupting the episode this early on, but in addition to Pato's birthday, it is actually the birthday of the DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast. We forgot to mention the episode, but I didn't forget in the recording. It has been 52 weeks, 1 year since the DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast started. I just want to say from my heart, a massive thank you for all the support you've given us. Thank you for keeping on listening. Thank you for keeping on engaging week on week. And here's to a great few years ahead. Thanks very much for the previous year. And let's look ahead to the rest of the episode. Well, let's start off with Pato's now ex-teammate, David Malukas, who we had the word last week that he was released by McLaren, specifically setting the release for the 2024 season, which might be something we dig into a bit later. Obviously, he had that unfortunate accident pre-season whilst mountain biking, didn't compete in any of the races, and McLaren, obviously due to some sponsorship arrangements and political reasons, have been able to break the contract early, which means we will not see David Malukas in a McLaren, which is, I think, a universal, just huge shame for everyone. It was one of the most exciting moves of the season. I quite embarrassingly said now that it'd be the best drive move of the off-season. Regret saying it now. But yeah, huge shame. We won't see David Malukas in McLaren. I think we'll obviously delve into why the team did it, but no Malukas.
Yeah, I think it was kind of an odd one from the start, wasn't it? There was always kind of going to be immediate pressure on Malukas just from the fact that he was not first choice. Nobody that they were going to get was going to be first choice after, let's be frank, it was Alex Palou's drive. That was going to be Alex Palou in that car. But yeah, we don't need to dig back into Palou, but he was in the process of winning the championship with Ganassi. Racing drivers are ruthless. Why would he leave, even if there was a contract to honor? So yeah, they were kind of left with that decision, weren't they? Who are you going to put in the 6th car? Rosenqvist, by that stage, he wasn't really kind of feeling wanted necessarily, I would imagine. Ilott was locked in at Hunkos at the time, but yeah, you've got to get your business done early, and I guess Malukas was the best option at the time. But there was always going to be a bit of pressure, and maybe they might reevaluate at the end of the year, for instance, given he was not their first choice necessarily, and it was always a little bit of a gamble. He was a little bit unproven still. He wasn't necessarily the most consistent driver ever, but he was at Coin, and considering, he was at one of the smaller outfits, he had a good couple of years there, 16th, 17th in the championship, a podium in each of his 2 years. But yeah, fast forward to February, and yeah, I suppose disaster struck, you could say, really, and it just appeared there was setback after setback, didn't it? He was supposed to be back after thermal ahead of the 500 test, wasn't there. Long Beach rolled around, Barber rolled around. 2 physical tracks, whether Long Beach for its bumpiness, Barber just generally being a very physical track. It was only between those 2 races he actually had his pins removed from his wrist, which was well behind schedule, given he should have been back in the car by that point. And just throughout, I can't even imagine the anguish of just having to kind of watch replacements in his car and replacements doing well, because both Ilott and Pourchaire did impress adequately, I would say, when they were in the car. And yeah, I mean, it seemed there was an outside chance he'd be back for the Indy GP coming up this weekend, as per a tweet that he put out. I think it was during the Barber weekend, but then seemingly as a surprise, it McLaren's statement came out, and brutally, Malukas was cut. And I can imagine it was crushing for him. I really hope he kind of gets the support he needs, whether maybe from the team. It was understandable, as you kind of mentioned, Dan, clauses in the contracts. That uncertainty isn't really helpful for the team. And yeah, you also have sponsors, they want continuity as well, the same drivers, and ultimately going race by race isn't sustainable. And it kind of was just continually unclear when Malukas would be okay to return. And yeah, regardless, I'm gutted for him. He was so desperate to really impress and get embedded within the team. He moved from Chicago to Indianapolis. So yeah, all of that unfortunately comes to nothing.
In his contract, it said that if he missed 4 races, then that would be like reason to cut it. Obviously, it's a different circumstances. Injured, so he's not voluntarily missed them. It's not up to him. And I think that also included the Fermo, which wasn't a championship race.
I should really go on to this is present day Dan after last week's This is Future Dan to review this Malukas situation. But at the end of the day, you started off, he was a low risk option for McLaren. If it went wrong, McLaren haven't really lost anything. You almost feel like, let's say Palou, for example, had the same mountain bike issue. Would they have dropped him? Absolutely not. If I had been in that car, would they have dropped him? I'm not convinced they would have done. Malukas is a low risk option, and McLaren always knew that. And I'm not saying they could exploit it in a way, but as I said, if it was Palou and that situation happens, he's not going to be binned off before 4 races, which is a bit of a shame for Malukas, because where he was to a level unproven, as I said, it was a low risk for McLaren, but they were taking a gamble on signing Malukas, and it hasn't worked out, and it is a shame. But then again, when you've now got Callum Ilott available, it's he was your pick anyway, and if you can get him and guarantee him, why wouldn't you, instead of a driver who he wasn't your first choice anyway and isn't guaranteed for, well, we don't know how long he's unavailable for. I mean, suggestions where he's getting back to recovery, but you can't really see him getting back to at least after the 500, and you really want your driver guaranteed for the Indy 500, because that's, well, we get to this point in the month where you want to start promoting your driver for the Indy 500. This is where the formalities come into play. So it's a shame, and as you said, I hope Malukas gets the support, whether that's from the team doing something or giving him the support he needs to find a future driver. I suggested, maybe they could help him try and find a driver, something like Hunkos for next year if they don't continue with Grosjean or Canapino, whether they keep him sort of able to observe what happens on the stand for the rest of the year, just so he's still around the paddock, because once you're out that paddock, it's unfortunately very hard to get back in. Yeah,
no, for sure. I mean, whether it's going back to coin an option, obviously they've not got the 51 car kind of pending post 500. And I think he spoke to Marshall Pruitt, said that mid-June is now his recovery time. So regardless of kind of when the 4 races fell, it was always going to be sort of a delaying of the inevitable, not like sort of holding on to him, I would imagine, unfortunately for him. I think the fact that the accident happened when he wasn't in the car, I mean, obviously kind of they cut Oliver Askew at the end of that year. I think it was 2020 when he had all of his concussions, and that was due to stuff in the car. But, it could have had an impact. He wasn't, by any account doing anything untoward, and it was purely just a kind of freak accident that he pulled the wrong brake, went over the handlebars. He wasn't messing about doing anything extreme. But if it was in the car, would kind of the team have maybe, I don't want to say supported him more, because, they do seem to have genuinely supported him. Tony Kanaan's been, basically just sacrificing every other element of his job to support Malukas. But it's a ruthless business, isn't it? And, no matter, they clearly, it felt like a good fit. We saw a lot of Malukas on social media, and it must be a pain now for McLaren having to either cut him out of the social media. It's quite a shame, because there was that one of them all eating random foods, which actually looked really interesting, but that will never see the light of day now. Yeah, I know. It's a shame, isn't it? But I mean, there were even videos. He's such a good kid, isn't he? I mean, he's bubbly, he's outgoing. I think all around he's just a great character. He interacts with fans. He does all of his making memes on the internet. He's a real social media presence. He sings on the radio. He's just pretty much impossible to hate, isn't he? I mean, there was a video doing the rounds after being cut where he was cleaning the number 6 car's rear wing with one hand in a cast, but the other hand he was scrubbing the wing, cleaning the car, and he clearly was trying so hard to, impress the team and really make an impression. But I guess that's why it's so devastating that he isn't going to race. But ultimately, as kind of brutal as it is, you can completely understand the team's decision. I think he understands it as well.
The issue is, I think the other thing is, if Ilott and Porsche were performing so well in their car, let's say one of them were to win a race, or one of them were to do really well at the 500, that creates a bit of an awkward situation where they're seat filling, but performing better for a guy who isn't guaranteed, which I think, again, is one of the issues in that case where if one of them did get a freak result. I mean, what happens that seat next year? What happens to Rossi's seat? We don't know. But, I mean, Malukas is probably not going to be in the fray. Ilott in the fray, Porsche in the fray, who knows? But where does Malukas go now? As you said, I don't think Dale Coyne Racing's a bad shout. He's obviously sort of at home. Yes, admittedly, it would be in the 51 car compared to the 18 car, but he knows the team well. He's still got a chance to put his name out there when he does recover. I think the way Coyne do their business, I think they'll accept anyone and everyone, even if it's not 100% fit Malukas. So, you know, we'll see what comes of that. As you said, it's probably not going to be for another 5 or 6 races. We'll see him anyway, but he's got to stay around the paddock. He's got to get his name out there because, you know, this is when teams start doing their business, and he wants to get in a car as soon as he can and start performing at a level where he's going to be on the eyes of some team owners.
Yeah, I mean, other options, could Rahal be an option at the end of the year? Maybe. We know that Lundgaard is kind of pretty coveted by some of the top teams. I think this is a contract year for him. It's a pretty crucial one. So I think Malukas would maybe fit well there. I think, yeah, if he wants to get back in a car before the end of the year, then Coyne really is the kind of place. I think, yeah, the statement did say he was cut for 24. Does that suggest they'll revisit for 25, or is it simply just something they have to say contractually, kind of just legally? Because I personally felt Malukas' statement was more certain and sort of suggesting, you know, this is probably the end. And yeah, unfortunately, these opportunities come and then go and sometimes never come back. And I think Malukas is young enough and talented enough and has enough potential that shouldn't be the case. And if he did end up at a team like RLL, for instance, I feel like that would be a great place. We know the performance that they've shown on road and street courses in particular, which is almost the place that Malukas has stood out the least so far. It's really been ovals where he's been really strong. So, yeah, I feel like that could be a good destination. But again, it kind of all is uncertain at this stage because, you know, we really don't know the exact ins and outs of the complications with the wrist. However, pins out, cast off, I think it does seem that things are speeding up a little bit now, just a lot behind schedule.
Yeah, I just feel the shame that I feel is Malukas, he didn't really seem to have an indication maybe that this was coming, whatever was said in the contract, you know. Tony Kanaan supporting of the simulator was great, but, you know, him getting a sim over to him, is that suggesting they were planning for him to get back in the car? And obviously, he put out that tweet the day before suggesting that, you know, he was focused on getting back for the Indy GP. You know, it's just a bit of a shame. I feel like he didn't know about it. He obviously blacked out his Twitter the night before, which obviously suggests it was a bit of a shock, etc., etc. So, you know, I'm sure he'll come back from this. I hope to see him in the paddock. I'm sure he will somewhere because, without naming names, he's better than several drivers in the field. So let's hope to see him back in a future date. But what did McLaren do? What did McLaren do now? I think the suggestion now is going to be Ilott, Porsche split the rest of the season. They've obviously got clashes in Super Formula or WEC, but between them, they can do every round this year. On the day of recording, Porsche is testing at Worldwide Technology Raceway. That gives him basically the ability to compete on ovals. And I think, if I remember this correctly, he'd have to do the Iowa doubleheader, the Milwaukee doubleheader, and Nashville. I don't think he's got to do Gateway. I could be wrong on that.
I definitely saw that he would have had to do double headers. I'm not sure beyond that. But I think the fact that they are testing him on an oval does suggest that he is an option along with Ilott. I mean,
you wouldn't test someone on an oval for the fun of it, no, really, would you?
Absolutely not. Unless they really just want to see, right, if this guy genuinely can perform on ovals. It won't be for the 500 because those formalities are kind of all done. It's not super speedway as well. Obviously Gateway.
Need to do ROP. So
yeah,
and Ilott's obviously got 2 years experience and he's
exactly
the best guy.
And did really well last year.
Yeah, I think between them, Porsche can do more races. There's a few where both of them can do it. So it's Monday today. We don't know yet. So presumably be formalised either tomorrow or Wednesday, I'd imagine. But stay tuned to the DIVEBOMB website for when that comes out. But from what we understand, Porsche in this weekend, Ilott in for the 500. and thereafter it's pretty even. I think slightly more towards Porsche, but I don't want to say it'd be a written off year for that car. Obviously, they're getting a leader circle, which they should do comfortably, but maybe evaluating both of them ahead of the 2024 drive.
I think Porsche only had something like 3 clashes. It isn't the longest calendar. No, it's WEC to be fair, but Super Formula doesn't have as many clashes. I think it kind of makes sense that. Sorry, go on, Dan.
I've got a list if that helps. Porsche next week, Islet for the 500. Detroit is either Road America would be Porsche, Laguna would be Islet, Mid Ohio can be both, Iowa would be Porsche, Toronto would be Islet, Gateway would be either, Portland would be Islet, and the last 2 would be Porsche.
Yeah, okay. I think, obviously focusing near future, we expect announcements to come soon, but Porsche for the road course, Islet for the 500, that just makes sense. I guess it's kind of, do they wait to the end of May? But I guess just splitting it between the pair, that's what I don't see any other eventuality. It almost is like just an extended examination for both of them, I would imagine, because there's a chance there could be 2 seats free next year if Rossi moves on, and then you've got the 6 as well. So it could be a decent lineup. It would be a young lineup, but very exciting lineup if you had O'Ward with Islet and Porsche. That would be extremely exciting. So I guess they just want to continue to evaluate through the rest of the year. I imagine that's what they'll do. They shouldn't have issues leaders circle-wise. We all know how good Islet is. Porsche has obviously shown pretty good promise early on, so they shouldn't have any issues there. I don't really see, unless they aren't impressed by Porsche's overall rookie test and decide to put in a veteran like a Hunter Ray or a Daly, I don't see whether they gain much from that, really. I think I would just put Porsche in the car for those ovals and just try and prepare him as best as you can for hopefully next year.
I'd also argue if he's not good enough on ovals and you were setting him for a full-time performance, what's really the point in sort of chucking him in a road and street? So I think they'll probably persist with him anyway, just because there's no point not to, really. But
he seems so keen, Porsche, to kind of make this move to IndyCar. Obviously, F1 is the dream, and if a seat did come up next year somehow, which seems very unlikely, then he might still pursue that. But he very much seems to like IndyCar as an option and seems to be kind of embracing it, really.
No, I was just going to say, they seem kind of more likely in terms of, say they don't have anyone else, they can always continue on, like, in other years. And like you said, you mentioned Daly and Hunter Ray, and I think Tony Kanaan kind of said that they could do something, like they could come in for a couple of races, but it would be very unlikely to see them like in the future beyond 2024. So like I said, there's no point in bringing them in, really, unless they're just not satisfied with Islet or Porsche's performance.
Yeah, you've got to use the year to build for the future. Absolutely.
Does anyone remember who replaced Felix Rosenqvist and McLaren in 2021 for 2 races? Well, 1 race and someone else at the other race.
Kevin Magnussen was one of them.
Kevin Magnussen. After watching the F1, we need Magnussen back in IndyCar.
He's just perfect.
He just comes across as a great IndyCar driver. He's got the McLaren links, previous IndyCar McLaren experience. He's feisty. He get his elbows out. He won't be afraid to push people off track. That's the kind of racing that IndyCar thrives on. He'd be excellent in IndyCar. Bring a fan base over. He'd be awesome. Absolutely. Get him in. Absolutely. Get him in for when
the wheel-to-wheel racing, like essentially like what we saw at Barber. That is just Magnussen's wheelhouse. That would be just it suits him to a T. It really does.
Literally the perfect contender for IndyCar. If you're IndyCar team owners, when you're listening to this, get Kevin Magnussen in. Bring him in for next season. He'd be brilliant. Magnussen and Ferrucci, I think, would give us some of the best racing I think I've ever seen in my life. So I love it. RG Bargy, yet again, RG Bargy coming out there, pushing off track, not afraid to get a penalty for hard racing. I love it. Anyway, we'll come back to that a bit later on the topic if we have time. But let's look forward to, as I said, this race called the Indianapolis 500, whatever that may be, and all the things that come along with it. So let's start with some of the storylines that we'll be going through. So maybe we won't do them too in depth because we've done them quite in depth already. But we're going to pick out 3 that we're going to follow in particular on the podcast throughout the month. So the first one is going to be obviously Rahal Letterman Lanigan. You don't need to know the story of last year, what happened. You know it all now already. But the question is, are they going to be able to turn it around? I think you highlighted in the podcast a few weeks ago that they were slower when they had a tow, which is quite simply incredible. Staying with 4 cars, which is a pretty brave decision considering how they performed last year. But they're bringing in Takuma Sato, 2 times Indy 500 winner, alongside Rahul Lundgaard and Fittipaldi, obviously. Can they recover? Well, I think my argument is it can't really get any worse than it did last year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've covered their disaster so much, haven't we? All 3 full-time cars ending up in last chance qualifying, only leg making it automatically into the field, and only just as well. Yeah, then obviously 2 of their drivers having to fight to make it into the field in that sort of epic finale in the last chance qualifying session. I mean, it was a bit weird in the end, wasn't it? Because obviously Rahal raced anyway, but it was such an emotional situation at the time, and they absolutely do not want a repeat of that. And they've put tireless amounts of work to just improve their fortunes on ovals since the off season. That was what a lot of the focus went into, because it didn't get much better as the season went on the short ovals, as we've kind of covered before. But yeah, 3 cars would have made sense, but they opted for Sato's experience in the end, and we kind of pressed Rahal on this after the recent open test, which was kind of curtailed by rain. But he feels like someone like Sato was the only sort of move that made it worth it to go to 4 cars, and that feeling that sort of experience outweighs the sort of greater focusing of resources. But essentially, Rahal felt, even though they won it in 2020 with Sato, he was on the podium, he could have won in 21, that just issues were being masked. And I think last year kind of just essentially made these fears ring true, and was a real kind of wake-up call. Graham felt pretty vindicated. And yeah, the car, with even just a sniff of a toe, they didn't have massive toes in the open test, but it was getting faster in the toe rather than actually ending up further behind cars and essentially slowing down and not speeding up at all. So there's an air of confidence. Yeah, there was limited running in the test, but this is such a huge story to follow kind of as May goes on. And they've kind of bounced back well on road and street courses since last May. Expect them to kick off the month strong, kind of as proper contenders for the win in the GP this weekend. And then they'll hope when they get on the oval that things can really, really be a lot better than last year.
I don't think it can get worse. I think literally any result that they do can be better, unless every single one of their drivers isn't going to get bumped. That's the only way that it's going to be worse, and I don't think that they've going to allow that. And I think, like you said, they've kind of worked on themselves and looked within the teams to not allow that to happen, and they'll be determined just to kind of get out, just to prove that last year was a one-off and it's not going to happen again. It was literally not luck. It was just once, and then it's never going to happen again. Like that.
It's a bit frustrating we don't have Texas, because we sort of don't have this like preliminary expectation of where people are. It's a lot more random. Like, we wouldn't have expected RLL to be last at Indy last year, so you can't ever predict massively. But what Graham said is obviously encouraging, and we'll get onto names we talk about who could get bumped. But I think there's people who might struggle more than RLL just on the eye. So look, it's going to be a big month. I think anything can happen in Indy. So we'll keep our eyes peeled. But I think it can't get any worse. I think Sato will bring in a lot more experience that they need to really propel them forward. 3 years ago they were competing for the win. 4 years ago they won the race. Something's there. You don't lose that overnight. And they obviously mentioned a lot of work with the engineers and the personnel. I think they mentioned a lot of F1 personnel before who didn't sort of have that experience, but now they will do coming into this year, and I think they will do better. But obviously we'll follow that throughout practice and qualifying. The next one we're going to follow, we have touched on quite a lot, so we won't do it too much. It's this chap called Carl Larson. Don't know if you've heard of him in this race that neither of us have heard of. Obviously coming in as a rookie for Arrow McLaren, as he does what's called the double or double G, however you want to call it, the Hendrick 1,100 miles, as he does the Indianapolis 500 in the early afternoon before he heads to Charlotte for the Coca-Cola 600 the evening. That's a story in itself, but the other story is probably the biggest name in NASCAR is coming over to the Indianapolis 500 for an attempt at maybe the greatest motorsport achievement of all time if he pulls it off.
I mean, have we ever had a rookie this talented? He's got to be up there with some of the most talented rookies.
Fernando Alonso.
Yeah,
in the mix.
Up there with Alonso, but I mean, he's a generational talent, isn't he? I mean, yeah, we've exhausted the topic a little bit, but I guess that just kind of proves what a story it is, and it really is the story of this May, I would say. I think the open test only increased that hype in the sort of, I think it was about 2.5 hours of running. They ended up getting I mean, it was a bit weird because he ran the veteran session, obviously, because he did his ROP back in October. But yeah, finished P2 with what he said was a lap that had a magic draft. But still, I mean, yeah, maybe where he finished isn't totally representative, but it makes certain that he will be absolutely competitive. And I would be astounded if he's anywhere near getting bumped. I would say, you'd expect him to be sort of contending to get into the Fast 12. And, he's so adaptable. I guess that's what it's shown, really. That was his first traffic running. And all of a sudden, he's kind of flung in onto the track with other cars after previous tests running by himself. And he didn't really have any issues. He kind of, feels like he's got a good feeling in the car. He might lose the car, but then he manages to save it whenever he has a moment. And yeah, things are going to ramp up once May kind of gets going. There's plenty more to learn. I think he knows that. But he's clearly very comfortable with his car. He's got some good teammates. And again, the test doesn't show everything, but he was pretty competitive with those teammates. Obviously, finishing second only to Newgarden, so he was the fastest of the McLaren cars. Yeah, he's spoken a lot about just not wanting to be overloaded through this whole process. I think he's doing a very good job at just learning the relevant stuff and learning sort of in quite a gradual manner and just filtering out the stuff that's kind of a bit unnecessary. He doesn't want too many voices speaking to him either. But there is so much to get used to. I mean, all the buttons on the steering wheel, the adjusters in the car, the pit stops he has to do. It's just struck me, though. He's so calm. He's been so calm. He's not getting carried away. None of this phases him. And I'm so excited to see what he can produce.
And he started May in the perfect fashion. Just about, to make clear, by 1,000th of a second, he started May in the right way. And if you haven't caught it, he won the NASCAR race in Kansas quite literally by 1,000th of a second, the closest NASCAR finish of all time. Let's hope we get that in the 500. How would that be for a 500 finish?
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. Imagine Larson's in it again. But yeah, started his month off fantastically. He'll obviously be hoping to keep the form up. But I've said it before, this has been a year and a half in the making. He's got Tony Kanaan as his advisor. He's got Jeff Gordon as his other advisor. He's got the support of potentially the strongest outfit at the race. He's going to be a serious contender. And look, he's got a lot to learn, but he adapts quickly, does Kyle Larson. He is, as you said, a generational talent. He's quite probably top 5 drivers in the world. You could put him that high caliber. He is a serious driver, and he is going to be a serious. Well, let's hope he's going to be a serious contender for this race, because that, as we said, we've had this debate before. Do you want him to do too well? Does that look bad in IndyCar? But at the end of the day, if he does well, we've got a whole new set of fans, and it's going to bring in international attention. So
yeah, I was just going to say the amount of attention it's kind of already brought from the NASCAR world. I mean, even NASCAR's social medias have kind of, during the test, they had posted about his big P2 lap. So yeah, the amount of attention hopefully it can bring to the series. Yeah, maybe we don't want him to show up all of our regular drivers, but you know what? I don't think it'd be that embarrassing, because I think Kyle Larson is just that good.
Yeah, I think the only thing that can kind of get to him is maybe the atmosphere. Like I said, he's already getting used to all of where everything is, but he did so well in the test. Coming second, yeah, it kind of like stopped early because of the rain and stuff like that. But still, to get that high already, and like you said, he went through all the traffic. He was in the turbulent air. He wasn't on his own. He already dealt with everyone being around him, so it shouldn't be that much of a shock when it actually comes to the race. Just the atmosphere, like I said, too many people speaking to him at once, or like around the time, can be a bit confusing. Just, he's already calm enough. Just keep it down to like the minimum people. Keep it just to the people that are required and everything like that. As long as he doesn't add in anything, then he'll be fine.
So Larson Mania has really hit the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IndyCar fans worldwide. And what's better to show your support for Kyle Larson by getting his merchandise, which you can find on the Formula Model Shop website, the official sponsor of the DIVEBOMB IndyCar Podcast, the best place to get your IndyCar merchandise in the UK as they grow the series in Europe.
You can use the discount code 5BOMB, all one word, FIVEBOMB, to gain 5% off products on the FMS site. Visit the Instagram highlights on the DIVEBOMB Motorsport Instagram for a link to an exclusive VIP section on the FMS store, courtesy of DIVEBOMB.
You can find the FMS site via a banner on the DIVEBOMB website by visiting formulamotorshop.co.uk.
Stay tuned for exclusive giveaways, events, and other content.
Let's move on to something we actually haven't touched on before, which is a potentially record-breaking month, because with the lighter components which were planned for the introduction of the hybrid, could we see some of the fastest speeds Indianapolis has ever seen? I think obviously the 1996 records are quite far out of reach, but we could see some of the fastest speeds you've ever seen with these lighter cars, with, well, simply faster cars now and a strong aero package. We could see some monster lap times this month. Obviously, the hybrid hasn't come in, which means you still have these lighter engines, which could create some really fast speeds. I mean, these cars somehow keep on getting faster and faster.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, yeah, track record, maybe not quite, but there's definitely the prospects of quicker times. I think Newgarden was already over a mile an hour quicker than his fastest time in the test last year. I mean, Newgarden always tops the test. So you've just got to compare his times year to year, and yeah, he was a lot quicker. But I think there has to be a balance. I think, you know, the car can't be too light because that kind of almost starts to sort of negatively impact performance. But yeah, it's definitely kind of one to follow a month, and yeah, something to definitely watch come qualifying weekend.
236 question mark?
Don't think it's impossible.
No, I reckon we'll see one. I reckon we'll see one. It's early to say, but Pelot was hitting what, 235 twos at points last year. So
yeah.
But yeah, it could be in quite a thrilling month. Who won't be in for a thrilling month? There's Abel Motorsports, who unfortunately, as of Friday, had to pull out of the race. They were, well, as we said, the intention was to get RC Enison in that car. However, he basically hasn't got the funding in time, unfortunately, which meant Abel have had to pull out. Still means you have bump day though, so it's not the end of the world, but sort of one of the underdog stories of last year won't be repeating that this year.
It's such a shame because, yeah, as you said, they did so well to make the field. Obviously, their day ended early in the race because of a mechanical, but you know, it kind of seemed so certain when Enison turned up for content day in January that he was going to be back. You know, he was excited about, you know, I'm going to be able to make the test this year, which kind of not making the test last year put them on the back foot, but then they still make the race on debut. So that was impressive. You know, he was speaking about, oh, we'll focus on traffic running this year, we'll be even better. But then, yeah, the kind of cruel budget issues that riddle motorsport so much just struck. And yeah, the Enison family had the car ready to go, but they didn't have the finances to make the test. And unfortunately, they've not found a sponsor in time to put together a really serious effort. And there's an issue with parts in IndyCar at the moment. Graham Rahal is one that's spoken a lot about that. I think he said in the post-test press conference that only Takuma Sato had his 500 car for RLL at the test because there's just a parts issue in IndyCar, and Abel unfortunately didn't receive their own car because Enison's car is owned by his family in good enough time. And yeah, I think they had a few drivers interested, maybe not premium options, but you know what? In the end, I admire that they didn't feel the pressure to really rush things, including not rushing Jacob Abel in at the deep end. You know, they really want to focus on him putting together an Indy Next title challenge this year. You know, if you don't make qualifying, what does that do to your reputation, whether Jacob himself, whether the team? You know, you've got to do things well. It's so tight and you won't make the field if you're just a little bit out. And yeah, it's unfortunate. I'm not sure they could have got away with missing the test again. So yeah, it's ultimately the right decision. But yeah, it is a shame.
Yeah, it's part of motorsports. You know, these things happen. But I raised this point off podcast where actually still having only one car to be bumped is still quite a good prospect. You know, last year, for example, if we had two cars bumped, that would have been dead on Harvey Rahal. There would have been no point really watching bump day. But you know, when you sort of like that one car, you have a bit more jeopardy. Somebody could crash on their only run, for example. Somebody could just have a disastrous day. You know, you still have that sort of unpredictability. But with two cars, maybe actually in some aspects, you don't quite have that effect with bump day. So
yeah,
the spotlight's for some one person, which might be.
Yeah,
which is either a good thing or a bad thing. But.
Yeah, even more agony for the person that is bumped, of course, but not having someone else there that's going through the same thing. But yeah, I mean, maybe they'll run some races later in the year. I think.
Yeah, that was
quotes given
suggested. Maybe
sort of racer, Indy Star, kind of got quotes from Bill Abel.
Yeah, maybe with Jacob. I mean, it's sort of the understanding is if they can get a full-time car, he'll be in one next year. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's less pressure as well, not making your debut at the 500 as well. I think making your debut at the 500 in a car it's sort of essentially been rushed in the way it's been assembled. So, Yeah, they're really serious about this IndyCar business there, Abel, and yeah, I really like the prospect of it. If there's enough engine leases, this forever booming grid.
It's a shame, but talking of the rookies, let's just quickly brush over some of the ones that we are going to see this year. We've obviously got the full-time ones, Kiffin Simpson, Tom Blomqvist, Linus Lundqvist. You've got Christian Rasmussen, who's competing in the extra car for Ed Carpenter Racing, the 33 car. That's the only over race he's going to be participating this year, as obviously Ed Carpenter takes over the 20 car for the rest of the over races this season. So this is the only time we're going to see Rasmussen on an oval. Then we've got Larson, as we've just previously mentioned, as well as Nolan Siegel. This is going to be one of the 4 races we see him out this year. Actually, the third of the 4th we're going to see him for this year in the 18 car for Coin. And we're also going to have Marcus Armstrong. Yes, I know somebody might be shouting, oh, Marcus Armstrong is not a rookie. He had a season last year. However, bear in mind, he didn't do the Indianapolis 500, so he's still considered a rookie for this race.
Yeah, should we go on to the rookie drivers that we're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, that's an ab time, I reckon. Who wants to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. So the rookie, we've all selected a rookie, a full-time driver, and a one-off driver that we kind of want to keep an eye on through the month. And for me, it's going to be Christian Rasmussen because, yeah, as you've said, Dan, it's an interesting rookie crop. I'm intrigued to see what the Ganassi trio can do. I've maybe got a bit more confidence in Armstrong and Lundqvist, given Simpson is just so young. He's kind of so inexperienced just in general as a driver. He's done a lot of stuff for his age, but he's pretty young. Coyne, there's a bit of instability there. I do fear a little bit for Siegel. Obviously, they had a car in last chance qualifying last year in Rob. So, yeah, for me, I think Rasmussen's the one I really kind of want to keep an eye on as possibly being able to produce something. He was inside the top 10 in the test. He was actually faster than VK and Ed Carpenter. And, we've seen how good ECR are at the 500. They've led laps over all of the last few years. They almost always just have 3 very, very fast cars. And, you have to hope that he's not in, maybe a slightly neglected third entry, because obviously you've got Ed Carpenter coming into his ordinary 20 entry, which is what Connor Daly's been in recently, which Rasmussen's driving on road and street courses. So yeah, you've got to hope that's not the case. Even VK though, he excelled as a rookie. I think he qualified 4th as a rookie. So yes, okay, this is the first super speedway sort of race experience for Rasmussen. He's been very good on ovals in Indy Lights, Indy Net. So yeah, I'm just intrigued to see what he can do in a package that's often so strong. I mean, there's so much learning to do for all of these rookies, running alone, running in traffic. Both of those disciplines they kind of have to get used to, but there's a lot of practice time to kind of learn those things. And we saw what Benjamin Pedersen, who let's be honest, Rasmussen has more junior pedigree but he produced some pretty impressive stuff for Foyt, a team that you would say are kind of just as capable as Ed Carpenter Racing at the Speedway. So yeah, I'm interested to see what Rasmussen can do. He's my one to watch.
My one to watch, I put Linus Lundqvist. I think in terms of like Indy Next and that, I think he did all right in ovals and stuff like that. And I know that in kind of Iowa Speedway he was in 4th, so I think he'll do okay and stuff like that. I don't really have much to say on him really. I think that he'll be the one to watch. Like I said, he was all right in ovals, and I'm just going to see what he can do.
I think the advantage he has as well is he ran an oval for my Shank last year, did he?
Did he win Gateway?
Exactly. There you go. So that's he's got a little bit of IndyCar oval sort of experience. I know it's very different being a shorter oval, but that's another thing to kind of sort of watch.
I've gone for his teammate Marcus Armstrong. Now, there's a few points here relating to Armstrong, which is why I picked him. The first one is he's got that year's experience. He knows how to drive a car. He knows how to hustle it around. Yes, not quite an oval. He hasn't done an oval race, as we all know. However, what we obviously do know from Armstrong is that he was on the stand last year. He's got that experience at the 500, sort of learning from the likes of Dixon and Palou how to race ovals, how to race at the 500. And that's sort of the one advantage he will have compared to the rest of the rookies. But I think one other thing that I think from a more personal standpoint for Armstrong is he sort of needs a headline result at this point in his career. Lundqvist has come in 3 races into his Ganassi career. He's already got a podium. Armstrong has been okay. He's been probably better than expected. He's done a solid job, but he still lacks that headline result. Lundqvist has come in straight away. He's got that headline result. He's got that podium. And we know for next year, Ganassi are going to have 3 charters. outside of Dixon Palou, Chip Ganassi is going to have to choose one of the other 3 drivers who's going to take that third chart spot. Now, this is a difficult point for Armstrong because he's got to prove that he is better than Lundqvist. He's got to prove that he's this guy at Ganassi. Well, where does he find himself now? He can't fall behind the pecking order to Lundqvist because that's really, I think, I feel in some ways, could kill his career. So, really big month. But if there's anywhere where you're going to change it, the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is absolutely the place, and it's a good chance for him to sort of get the headline result that he really does need.
Yeah, completely agree. I think it's a really, really good point. He will be super motivated off the back of Lundqvist, obviously. 6 races into his IndyCar career, notching a podium as Armstrong hasn't managed an entire season. So, yeah, very good point. I think all the rookies really for their different reasons are kind of ones to watch. But yeah, those 3 in particular, I think, are probably the ones that maybe back for almost the most success, aside from Larson, as we've already spoken about.
Let's go on to the additional / returning entries for the race. We've got Helio Castroneves, the drive for 5 continues in the 06. We then have Carl Larson, obviously, in number 17. As we said, Seagrass turning in the 18 and Carpenter in the 20. Ryan Hunter-Ray and Connor Daly make up the dry Reinbold entries in the 23 and the 24. As we said, Rasmussen's also the additional entry in the 33. We're going to have Catherine Legg coming back in the 51 entry, Takuma Sato in the 75 entry for Rahal Lanigan, and Marco Andretti for Andretti Autosport. In the shock of the year that Andretti's returning for Andretti. But we've all picked out a driver for this one. Let's do it in reverse order this time, so I'll kick us off for this one. And we've briefly mentioned him, but I'll go into a bit more detail. Takuma Sato. I think he, outside of Castroneves, is the only person to win multiple times in this current field at the Indy 500, obviously 2017, 2020. He's one of RLO, he's one of Andretti. He's got plenty of experience around the Speedway, what it's been going almost 15 years now around the Indy 500. He's always great to watch, He will go for a full send move. He's not afraid to crash out, It's just one chance a year to make headlines, and he will absolutely go and make them. And, he's got a wealth of experience. There's a reason why he always goes so well at IMS, because he is an immensely strong driver. Look, youth isn't on the side. He is 47 years old. It is old tacky, but he's still right at the top of his game. We saw last year, I think he finished 7th in the end. Don't quote me on that, but it was around that mark. He was still pretty strong. And yes, RLO have had a turbulent few years. Do I see him as a contender for the win? I think probably a bit of an outside chance in RLL, but this place, anything can happen. So I think he's the guy that they really need to bring them forward. And you never know, anything can happen. We'll see what happens to him, but I'm always excited to watch Taki come back.
So we've already kind of mentioned him, but mine is Carl Larson. Like we said, he's got the experience, not in IndyCar necessarily, but he's got the experience in motorsports. He's already doing really well. Like I said, he's already started off this month really well in NASCAR, but also in terms of the testing that he did kind of for the Indy 500. Like I said, he came second. He was keeping up with Joseph Newgarden. There's nothing I can say that I haven't kind of already said, but he kept up. He's also got the experience in the traffic. He's got used to it. Nothing should maybe come as a surprise. The only kind of thing that he'll have to deal with is any like cautions, like red flags, yellow flags. That will be something that he'll have to deal with, which isn't something he can really like prepare for in kind of in the Indy 500. But other than that, he's got the experience. He kind of knows what he's going into, and if he can stay calm and doesn't get distracted by everything else, he'll be completely fine.
I think really is my one to watch. Why would you look any further than Helio Castroneves as the drive for 5 continues? I mean, yeah, the test is really hard to tell, but I thought Meyershank Racing looked decent from the kind of limited running. I think at one point Tom Blomqvist was top of the Noto times. So again, that's something just to take note of. Again, it's not really that representative or anything. Again, over a month before, so conditions are different too. But I mean, look what Castroneves did only 3 years ago in the team's early days as a 46-year-old, and now he's going to be 49 by the time the fortnight rolls around. But you know what? I don't think he's lost any of that kind of mastery at the Speedway. That win in 21, his fourth 500. That was a one-off. That was a one-off race at the time. It was his first race since leaving Penske. So that's something to take note of. That's the first time he's kind of done it as a one-off since. You
predicted a one-off to take pole. Who's your initial?
I did say that as well.
Who's your initial backing with?
I forgot I said that. Who's my backing with? Do I go for? I think I might actually go for Daly. I'm just going to say Daly.
Daly, that's bold. Okay,
Which is very bold because they
did.
they did not have a good test at all, which we'll get onto. I'll just say Daly, just for the sake of it. He's quick. No, obviously Castro Neves is back to being a one-off again, and kind of all focuses on that race aside from this leadership role he now has at Shank. Don't really need to say much about him, do you? 4 wins kind of says all you need to know, but just look at the trajectory that Meyer Shank Racing are on as a team. Can this continue on ovals? I think Rosenqvist has kind of floated that question because it's, again, without having Texas and with only limited test running, you don't actually quite know. But they're on such a kind of rise this season that I would back it to kind of continue at IMS. Why not? It would be foolish to ever rule Helio out.
Let's go for one sort of full-time driver, one regular driver who we're going to pick out as one who maybe doesn't have the spotlight on them, but we still think deserves a bit of attention to keep their eye on for. So Ellie, you haven't gone first yet, so pick your driver for May.
Okay. I put Rossi. He has finished 5th in terms of the Indianapolis in 2022 and 2023. I feel like he's done okay at this. Obviously, he's been doing all right at this track. I feel like if he can consistently be getting that and also be higher, then there's no point that he can't do any better. In terms of kind of his oval form last season, he was getting like 11th-ish. So, like I said, it wasn't bad at all. And
I don't know whether this is necessarily someone who's under the radar. I guess you probably could say he is, because I feel like the spotlight is on his 2 teammates. But I kind of more wanted to just bring to attention some things that Will Power has been saying. He's been very, very vocal about feeling that Penske almost certainly will be on the front row with at least one of their cars. He's been very, very confident since the test, and qualifying's kind of been the struggle for Penske recently. Newgarden went on to win the race, but he started mid-pack last year. Actually, Power was the fastest of them. I think he did make it into the Fast 12 shootout, but his race then ended early with some minor wall contact that caused some damage that he couldn't continue with, unfortunately. The race car has been pretty good the last few years for Penske. It has just been qualifying, but there is genuine confidence from Power that they have everything to kind of put together a pole run this year, or at the very least front row, which isn't something we've necessarily kind of seen from them. Obviously last year, outright speed was not necessarily perfect. With the race performance of last year, and then Penske also with the prospect of starting up front, I guess it's a pretty ominous prospect, isn't it? I mean, Power was asked in the press conference where he mentioned this, I think it was at Long Beach, whether he'd read the script for the race. And, he said the script had him on pole, and he was going to be averaging in the 35s for the fastest lap of 236.5 miles per hour. So, watch out. Take stock of those numbers, because Will Power is very confident after the test.
So I've gone for Carl Kirkwood as my pick. It's been a bit of a quiet start to the season for Kirkwood. It hasn't been bad by any means, but he's finished in the top 10 in all 3 races. You can't really say it's been underwhelming, but you feel in some ways it has been, Kirkwood maybe could do a bit better, particularly compared to the way Colton Herta at the start of the season, for example. But you also look back to last year at the 500, he was comfortably the lead Andretti out of the 5 or however many he had, until he obviously got an accident with Rosenqvist and running in the sort of top 5, top 10. And that was his first year at Andretti, and Kirkwood was actually really impressive compared to his teammates. This is only his 2nd race at the 500. Yes, obviously Grosjean and Di Francesco also only had 2 races there. But, he outperformed Marco Andretti, who's been there 20 years or whatever. And I think Kirkwood's actually sort of going slightly under the radar. The way he performed last year, he was the only Andretti looked close again to the Fast 12, and the only Andretti looked strong at all in the race. Who's to say he can't sort of keep that form up this year? I think he's been, as I said, sort of sailing along the first bit of the year. It's just sort of the time to really ramp it up and get a real strong performance. And I'm quite excited by Kirkwood, because I think something's brewing in the Kirkwood camp here. Yeah,
I went bold and said he was my pre-season prediction, so it would kind of be remiss of me not to weigh in on this. He's had 2 500s under his belt, but I think he felt he really, really cracked what a good car at the Speedway and generally on an oval felt like last year, late in the race during the 500. And Andretti on the whole did not have a fantastic month. They've not won the race since 2017, and Kirkwood really stood out to me in the race last year. He just cut through the field kind of in a way that was similar to Newgarden. I think he genuinely felt like he was possibly in contention for a win or at least a top 5 late on before being caught up in that kind of pretty scary crash after coming together with Rosenqvist, ending up upside down. But I think something really clicked. He really feels like he's got to grips now with ovals and finally found sort of a car that he likes. And if he'd found that earlier, he felt like, maybe he could have won last year. So, yeah, they've obviously downsized now as a team. I think I'd focus on the team as a whole as well. They've only got 4 cars for the 500 this year. I mean, they've had up to 7 in the past, haven't they? But
only 6. Only 6.
Only 6. Okay. Only
just
6.
Just the 6.
Okay. Just the 6. Yeah, no, obviously they've kind of got these more focused resources this year, and that applies to the 500 as well, because they do have while having one more entry than they do sort of during the main bulk of the season, it's still less than they had last year. And we know what Herta is capable of. Marcus Ericsson is a massive addition. He could have easily won back-to-back 500s. So Andretti as a team are ones to watch, and I think Kyle Kirkwood is on a very good trajectory.
So what we're going to do is we'll pick out one driver we think would cause a potential surprise, and basically just a quick one-liner on why we think they could cause a surprise. So I'll kick us off. Alexander Rossi, I feel, is very regularly overshadowed by his McLaren teamates. Always been strong at the Indy 500, won it in 2016. Probably should have won it in 2019, 2020. Didn't quite happen, but I feel like he has finished top 5 last 2 seasons. And I feel he's been pretty overlooked by a lot of people, and he's always very quick at IMS. So Rossi is going to be the one I think could cause a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking Rinus VK, but I can't really say Rinus VK will be a surprise because he's always quick. So I'm actually going to go with the guy I went for a rookie to watch. I'm going to say his teammate Christian Rasmussen, simply because we know how quick ECR can be, and as a rookie, people will probably kind of underestimate what he could produce. But I feel like looking at his form on ovals in the junior series, and just generally, he's a very, very talented young driver, and I think he could really quickly get up to speed across practice and make the most of that car that is usually pretty strong.
Yeah, I said Kathleen Legg. I feel like, she's like coming into the car, and last year was hectic, just not necessarily for her, but for her teammates. She only just made it into to avoid bump day, and I feel like she'll this year just do really well and kind of go up, and also just coming into the season.
Let's look at some very quick potential bump / potential win options. Should we pick 5 apiece between us for potential bump win options? So the viewers are well. Oh, actually, we'll do 6 each. So we'll all do 2 rounds of 1, shall we? Start off with a winner. Alex Palou is my preseason prediction, so I've got to lock him in.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say Kyle Kirkwood for that reason.
Never mind. I'll just go Scott Dixon.
Bump 1, Nolan Siegel, Dale Coyne, a bit of a mess. And he's a rookie and he's quite young.
Simpson.
I don't know why, Rob.
Back to winners, Pato Award. Got to be.
I'm probably going to go for Scott McLaughlin. I think he said it's the best he's felt coming off the test, and I think he'll be pretty motivated to put right a few tough years at the Speedway.
I'm kind of feeling her. No real reason. I just feel like he'll do good.
And one more bump, maybe bump contender. What's the word? That feels harsh saying that, bump contender. One person who could be in the mix on bump day. I'm going to go Pietro Fittipaldi.
I'm going to go for Augustine Canapino.
Do you know what, Grosjean? If he crashes, not even that. If he crashes, I feel like just half a bad run or something.
Yeah, I mean, I just to expand a little bit. I think Hunkos had a really tough test, and I also think Dreyer and Reinbold could be in a little bit of trouble. Both of them kind of ran quite few laps. I think Dreyer and Reinbold had issues, particularly on Hunter Ray's side, so they'll need to overcome that. I think, yeah, you've got to look at the rookies, but I feel like the likes of Armstrong, Lundqvist, Rasmussen should be fine. Catherine Legg's another one that's possibly under a little bit of threat, I would say. But surprises can be sprung. We
wouldn't have predicted Rahal last year.
Exactly. I mean, and like win contenders, narrowing it down was so difficult because there's just so many can be strong. Penske are always there. Power, Newgarden, and McLaughlin, I kind of give them equal chances. Likewise, Palou, Dixon, I'd give both of them kind of pretty equal chances. Arrow McLaren are always strong. Can Andretti improve?
Right, 3 drivers of the current field have been bumped from the Indy 500. Question for the viewers as well, so pause and try and work out who is. I'll ask my colleagues, who are they?
Okay, so I mean, Ellie, do you want to go first? Yeah, O'Ward,
Award 2019 with Carlin.
Oh, sorry. Hunter Ray.
Hunter Ray, 2011, got knocked out. A bit of a Rakehall situation, actually. Ended up participating in a race for AJ4. So Ward was the only one to actually properly be bumped, funnily enough. So there you are. Right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to play a mini round of IndyCar Tenable. So stay tuned. Right, IndyCar Tenable. The odds for Indy 500 have been released. You have to guess the top 10 most likely drivers in the odds.
Okay, should we alternate?
Yeah, do you have 3 lives as usual Tenable rules go?
Award.
Number 1.
Joseph Newgarden.
Number 4.
Larson.
Number 3.
Pillow, like an obvious one.
Number 2.
Dixon.
Number 5.
I feel Power.
Number 10.
McLaughlin.
Number 6.
Who else? Kirkwood, maybe?
No, he's 11th.
Oh.
That's 1 life gone.
If Kirkwood's 11th, I'd probably say her. Ericsson will be there, surely.
Ericsson is 8th.
I want to say Rosenquist, but I feel like not. If Kirkwood's 11th, then he won't. I'll just say him anyway. Rosenquist.
It's 9th.
Wow.
One more. And 3 lives.
I'll probably go for Herter.
Nope, not Herter. 1 more life. 1 more to get.
VK, maybe.
No, VK's actually got quite low odds. That's Alexander Rossi.
I was going to say Rossi is my next one.
I told you.
Oh, I ruined it for us.
no one appreciates Rossi. Felix Rosenquist put a tweet on Twitter. We were talking about Magnussen earlier. He put a tweet on Twitter basically saying, there's always one in every series, the final boss of the midfield. They will do whatever it takes to not be overtaken. They will waste all their time, whatever, to not get overtaken. Someone asked Rosenquist who this was in IndyCar. He said Rossi. I think he did it as a bit of a dig, as a bit of a joke. But 1, do you think it's true? And 2, who is actually our opinion for the final boss of the midfield?
It's got to be Santino Ferrucci for me after that barber display.
Yeah, I think Colton Herter or Carl Kirk was not a bad shout. They like to do it. I mean, it feels weird because Ferrucci's not quite midfield, but I feel like Herter's a bit too good to be midfield. So it's trying to find that balance. Ferrucci, I think, is a good shout though, and I think Herter's quite a good shout.
I was going to say it's all subjective what you think is midfield, isn't it? Who would? I was going to say based if we're talking recently, like I just said, Ferrucci, especially if he continues it. But someone else.
Grosjean, maybe. Canapino. Final bosses of the IndyCar midfield.
I just can't look beyond Ferrucci.
I think we really have to go for Ferrucci for this one. So, final boss of the IndyCar midfield. Anyway, I know we're looking forward to the 500. We actually have a race next week. It's on Saturday as a change, as obviously they're going to be getting ready for the oval testing next week. So we've got the Indy road course on the road course. So I don't know what I was trying to spit out there, but we've got the Indy road course race, which is round 4 championship wise of the season. Obviously our second road course of the year after Alabama. No driver changes heading into this one, apart from the McLaren one, which will probably be Porsche, so it won't be a driver change. Obviously, Luca Giotto staying in the mystery 51 car for this weekend. Now, with that said, there's probably not too much to speak about for this race because it tends to be one of the more dull races of the year. But heading into this race, the Firestone Fast 6 predicted tournament is 9 apiece, so it's a very important round. So give us a minute or so, and we'll be back with our predictions. Right, I'm going to kick this off as I always do. I'm going to start off with Pato Award as my first prediction. Alex Palou, Will Power, Graham Rahal, Christian Lingard, Felix Rosenquist.
My 6 are Graham Rahal, Christian Lingard, Alex Palou, Pato Award, Joseph Newgarden, and Marcus Armstrong.
I am going with Palou, Pato, Newgarden, Herter, Ericsson, and Dixon.
There you are. Fast 6 locked in. Important week. As we head into the month of May and the Firestone Fast 6 Predictor Tournament, all very close, so it's going to be an important round. And obviously, stay tuned, we'll have the Podium Predictor Tournament for next week as well. So that's it, your Malukas news and your month of May preview. Looking forward to 108th running of the Indianapolis 500 and a bit towards the Sancio Grand Prix on the road course. So stay tuned for next week, we'll have our review of the Indianapolis Grand Prix and all the proceedings of it before we look a bit forward to the turning of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway into the oval form. Obviously, stay tuned on our socials. We'll have the McLaren news to give you this week when that's announced. So stay tuned for that. And any other pieces on the DIVEBOMB website, I'm going to have my preview up on Thursday to give you all the insights into this weekend's action. So thanks very much for watching. Thanks very much for listening. We probably hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you next time.